I didn't fight my way through a battalion of parademons to be told to calm down!
And they say I got a temper.
You have me at a loss, Mr.
My name is Orion. I fled from the fire pits of Apocalypse to warn you. He's coming.
Who is?
Darkseid.
Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books, I love talking about them, I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the Marvel fan site that I have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. We are concluding Walter Simonson's run on Orion with Orion 25. This is the final issue of the series. I have a playlist started with issue 1, so this will be the 25th and final video on that series. I love Walter Simonson. The series, unfortunately, Walter Simonson is old school, so the people that sort of started getting into comic books that were into your Todd McFarlane, your Jim Lees, which I was, Rob Liefeld, Mark Silvestri, just didn't give Walter Simonson a second look, considered him too antiquated. Now, I am an old soul, and even though in my teenage years I was all Jim Lee, I still loved Walter Simonson. His Thor run was absolutely amazing. I wish he would have gotten more, but unfortunately it didn't sell well. And the videos for Orion didn't do very well for me either, but I kept moving on because I always I like it. I like Walter Simonson, so any chance I get to do anything with Walter Simonson, I won't hesitate to do it here. So, here in the cover, this is from 2002. Here in the cover, we have Orion fighting Mr. Miracle with some parademons in the background here. So, I own every single one of these issues. As I mentioned, I'm a huge Walter Simonson fan. Look at this, even getting the legs crossed. That's pretty cool. So, we're in Centennial Park in Metropolis. And here we have Orion. Here we have our credits. Walter Simonson is writing and penciling. Bob Wyacek is his inker. He was also his inker in X Factor. And John Workman is the letterer. John Workman is one of the greatest letterers that is out there. So Orion's sitting here in this Centennial Park here. Arnicus is gone. The equation is gone. Even the Ichrois is vanquished. And me, what purpose now is left for? And look at the frogs here. This is kind of an ode to his Thor run, which I am currently going through Walter Simonson's Thor run, so I do have a playlist with that too. So we go here to the next page, and he's continuing thinking, now what? And then he's called, you can see here, someone's calling him off panel, and it is Scott Free. Scott Free is Mr. Miracle. And he says, it's been a long time, and you can see that something is forming behind him. My mother box helped me find you. And here is the anti-life equation going on top of Mr. Miracle. Are you okay? You look a little. And then all of a sudden, Orion goes, the equation, you have the anti-life equation. And Mr. Miracle is like, Orion, wait, I love Mr. Miracle's jacket there. Look, I'm not saying you wouldn't catch me in the end and kill me. After all, your specialty is killing and mine is staying alive. But if I wanted to use the equation, don't you think I'd have done so without warning you first? And so look at here, you can see Orion just punching around. And Orion says, "Good point, and your abilities at escape and evasion seem as sharp as ever, Mr. Miracle. So why are you looking for me?" Oh, poor trees. And Mr. Miracle says, "Interesting, even as you are now, interesting, even as you are now, you are able to recognize that I have the equation. Nobody else can. Not Darkseid, not even Barda." And Orion says, "Even as I am now, you mean you know I had it?" And Mr. Miracle says, "Of course. Who do you think played the part of the Black Racer when Darkseid and Metron's simulacrum failed? Somebody had to stop you." That was in Orion 15, which, again, I have a playlist. "Who could resist the equation but someone whose soul was already inextricably bound to it?" And Orion says, "So why have you sought me out?" And Mr. Miracle says, "Hope and the burning desire for freedom. What else? I wasn't named scot-free for nothing. Let me have some of your breadcrumbs." And so they're feeding the frogs here. "I come by myself occasionally when I walk alone. Some curious frogs inhabit this lake. Very strong. I've even seen them drive off rats. There aren't any in this part of town. This part of the park. I am so sorry. Cannot read today." So again, that's a nod to the Thor story. And Orion says, "What's that got to do with anything?" And Orion says, "Freedom, through strength, Orion. They seem to have found it. No idea how. But that isn't my way. I was hoping that you would be the key." And you can see him grabbing the frog there, giving him some of those crumbs. And Orion says, "Scott, be careful. Metron searches for you. He knows that there's is a riddle about the Black Racer's appearance on Apocalypse. As always, he seeks answers. He won't rest until he finds you." And Mr. Miracle says, "Then I'm glad I found you first, because I need to know, Orion. I need to know how to get rid of it." And Orion says, "I don't think it will help you." Here, he's very brooding. The cap on backwards, as it was popular during the 90s and early 2000s here. And Orion continues here. "After I realized that what I had done with the equation, using it to enslave the universe, I sought only death to atone for my failure." And so we're basically going to go through what this series was about here. So I'm going to skip this part because, again, I have a playlist here. So Orion had given it to the Ukros, and Mr. Miracle is happy. He goes. So let me get this straight. In your failure, he says in quotations, is that you saved the multiverse and got away alive. You are a great warrior, Orion. And Orion says, "Only a warrior without a cause. What good to be a warrior when you have faced the greatest foe, defeated it, and still live?" And Mr. Miracle says, "There are many answers to that honor. Glory, babes, a veteran's pension. None of these alternatives sound much like you. Come home to dinner with me. I'll bet there's still stuff to be done, and Barda would be pleased to see you. By the way, have you changed your eye color?" And he says it's a long story, which was covered in our previous issue here. So you can see apparently Barda and Mr. Miracle, who are married, live in Metropolis. And so Orion asks, "How can you hold the equation, Scott? How can you not use it?" And Mr. Miracle says, "That's a long story too. But you, of all people, should know that the only thing you can do with the equation is not use it. I've carried it a long time. A long time. I used it once, never again. And Orion is like, but how? Where? And Mr. Miracle says, I'll tell you later. I've never told Barda, and she hasn't guessed. Please say nothing to her about it this evening. So, and here comes Barda, and she's got a whole little pig here. And so Barda brings the dinner. Can't believe they're gonna eat all that here. So, this is good to see him. Also makes a point about his asking him about his new eye color. Barda and Orion used to serve together in Grant Morrison's JLA, which I am also covering, and I do have a playlist. So Mr. Miracle says, my very question, he says it's a long story. And Barda says, then we'll make it a long meal, and he can tell us all about it. And then to Mr. Miracle, Barda says, be a dear and check the fridge, would you? I've got some wine chilling in the freezer, and I don't want the bottle to explode. And so it says here 2 hours and a bottle of Chablis or Cablis. Sorry, I'm not a wine drinker, so I don't know how to pronounce that correctly. So in this panel, he basically is telling them about the stuff that happened in the last issue. And I like it here. Barda says, then maybe it's time for you to hear Scott's. We've about finished dinner, and he's been dying to talk to you privately. And Mr. Miracle is like, Barda. And Barda continues, darling, run along outside with Orion and Chad. I'll let you off KP duty for tonight. That'd be kitchen. Would it be kitchen patrol? I think it's kitchen patrol from the army. And Barda continues, you boys still have a lot to say to each other, and I'll find out whatever it is when you're ready. Now shoo, she says. So outside, our two heroes sit. Scott basically how much he loves her, and finally Orion says, why haven't you told her? And Mr. Miracle says, and so he basically says he's had it for a long time, even before he knew Barda, back when he was in Apocalypse. And secrecy becomes a habit here. He said, I sought you out today because today is an anniversary of sorts. A day when I confront the past all over again, and I had hopes. It really started when I was in Granny Goodness's orphanage where I grew up. Once I was old enough to realize what a hellhole it was, I used to slip out at night, my earliest escape training. So, Apocalypse is just not a very good place. So, all right. So basically it was in those nights of escape. And here he finds, found a city, a whole world of the hunger dogs, he says. He spied on them, and it says here he watched their hatred, their fears, their struggles against anarchy, their hunger for freedom, he says. So, all right. And so he says, then one night, and so he says here, dog soldiers in force, but they never come down here. And here they start shooting it out here. We're bringing you a taste of discipline from upstairs, you brutes. There's too many of you, and our orders is to thin out the herd. Time to die. So, yeah, Darkseid is not very good. And Mr. Miracle's like, they're killing them. Everybody. No, no. Before I could stop myself, I shouted. I don't remember what exactly. Something about the soldiers beating each other instead of beating those innocents. But if I'd been alarmed before, I was suddenly terrified. I forgot they were there killing At the sound of my voice, the Dark Soldiers stopped, turned on their tracks, and began killing each other. So here we see that. Then I do remember what I said. I screamed at the top of my lungs. Stop, he yells out. So they did. And just like the life equation, everybody, dog soldiers, old men, young women, let's start again. Dog soldiers, old men, young men, women, children. That was the last word I ever spoke in innocence. It took a moment for the enormity of what I was seeing to sink in. At that command, at my command, everything had stopped. Laughter, hatred, joy, fear, thoughts, hearts, minds, lungs. And where a moment before there had been a palazzo full of life, now there was only death. I never learned who sent the soldiers. It didn't matter. The blood was on my hands. So we all know it was Darkseid. I ran. So he basically says that's how I discovered that he was the bearer of the terrible anti-life equation. Highfather's son, scot-free. The world doesn't even begin to encompass such irony. Man, so he's had it apparently this whole time, and Darkseid never saw it. So Darkseid, of course, wants it because he wants total control of the universe. So, and he says here he didn't speak for months, but by not speaking, he without accessing the equation, he could bury it and see what he could do. So Orion says he has the ability to travel in the past, and he says, well, we can go back and muffle you, which Mr. Miracle says they wouldn't do any good. Eventually he would end up using it and perhaps cause even more damage. So he says that's not an option. He has to live with it and control it, but he thanks him anyway. So suddenly there's a boom tube and some demons are coming through, and so look at Orion. He just goes bah, and Mr. Miracle says, don't worry, Orion, demonoids are far too clunky to catch me. So look at how ugly Orion gets, which is his true face, because again, he is Darkseid's physical son. So Orion is like, what are they doing? Beats me. Did you leave a forwarding address someplace? Not with these guys. You sure they aren't your friends? And Scott's like, not a chance. I have it. And then he screams out in pain. So Barda comes out here. And Barda is awesome. She is one of my favorite characters in DC Comics. I love Barda and Firestorm, the Nuclear Man. Just a big fan. And Orion says, he's off to the left somewhere. I heard him cry out, "Did you die, you demons, die." And then they vanish. And she's like, where? And then she sees poor Scott all on the floor. And she picks him up and says, he's been wounded. Looks like a blade cut. And then this appears to be Metron here. and one that may prove fatal, yet he did nothing extraordinary to avoid it or my demonoid sending. But if it isn't Scott, could it be Barda? So looks like Metron suspects someone. I believe that's Metron. So we'll see here. So he knows something is up with that. So Barda deduces that the blade has been poisoned. She has Orion fetch Scott's mother box. Orion grabs it, and then Mr. Miracle begins to speak. Have to go. It's the day. Must. And then Barda's like, hush, Scott. You're not going anywhere like this. And just what do you have to do that's so important anyway? Flowers, get me up. And then Orion figures he's going to say what he was going to say. And then she's like, do you know about this? And he goes, well, I am already aware that he takes flowers to Apocalypse once a year. I can always smell the stench of on him when he comes home. So it's not some girl, is it? He's such a soft-hearted fool. I'll kill Darkseid personally if anything happens to Scott. And then Orion says, I don't think it was Darkseid. Why would he bother? And you know, it's no girl. But listen to me, Barda. There are some things that simply have to be done, and I'm afraid that this is one of them, no matter what. So now we are heading to Apocalypse here. And we have some parademons here. And they're investigating, thinking there was something, but he says there's nothing there. Return to base. But suddenly we see Mr. Miracle in costume here. So, and then the same here. There's nothing in the ground. And we can see Mr. Miracle right here. So what's going on? Because, of course, Mr. Miracle was laying in bed. So is this an imposter? We'll see. And so you can see there Mr. Miracle going here. And Mother Box tells me that the entire quarter is empty. Perfect. To the hunger dogs who are gone and the dog soldiers who went with them, who share in the death in the Brotherhood, they did not share in life. So he is leaving. So this must really be. So he must have recovered. So here we go. And so as he was laying, he goes, it's a trap. But Mother Box didn't detect it. They must have a jammer somewhere around here. A big one. The flowers. And you can see this. And here they come. And Mr. Miracle's like, parademons, 1,000 of them. Okay, so I've worn out my welcome, and off he goes. Oh, he's so cool. And I just love Walter Simonson's art here. They shoot at him, and he's falling, but he's like, not quite. So he apparently had some kind of thing to brace himself. Laser boots, blast a path. So isn't this cool here? And so he says here, Mr. Miracle, but by using Mother Box to thin out my atomic structure, I should be able to pass through them a few buildings and lose my pursuers. And suddenly, oof, I forgot she's being jammed. So, all right, so they shoot, and he manages to get away because that is what he does. And so, if this keeps up, all of Armageddon will be destroyed before I get clear. And so he makes another one, and he is just getting surrounded, and they all pounce on him, and they manage to capture him just to make sure he can't get away. Look at that. And so they're going to take him to Darkseid. And so he is speaking of Darkseid. There he is. Look at this huge tank here. And Mr. Miracle here says, this great engine must be the jammer itself. I can feel the vibrations through my feet. And so close to it, Mother Box is completely subdued by its powers. And of course, they're all praising Darkseid here. And so Darkseid observes, and he's got Mortala and Justine. So, all right. And Darkseid says, "At last, I pity Highfather isn't alive to see this triumph. This would break his heart." And then he laughs. "Mortala, have the darkest oblet in the deepest dungeon swept out. We wouldn't want our guests to think we lacked a certain standard of housekeeping. Justine, see to it that Granite Goodness is told that one of her star pupils is returning home. No doubt she'll want to see him while there's still time." So, all right. And you can see the people in this huge, monstrous tank here. So, and Mr. Miracle says, "So have we departed Armageddon at last. The architecture seems to have taken a turn for the worse." And this parademon hits him. "Silence, dog. Your days are numbered, but ye'd best keep a civil tongue in your head. You know what's good for you." So, and he just says, "I'll tear a strip off your face just for practice if I hear another word." And of course, Mr. Miracle is, "Suits me. I have nothing else to say right now." So, and so suddenly something is happening here. You can see that in these two panels here. And suddenly we see Mr. Miracle escaping, and he laughs here. This guy's like, "Sire, there's a problem at the Clink tank. Hail ye mighty of Apocalypse," he says. "You who are so bold when you thought you'd caged a tabby cat." And here comes this guy's rushing toward Darkseid, and he punches. "You abysmal fools, have you no eyes? This isn't scot-free. So come and face the smoking tiger." And he laughs, and Darkseid guessed it is Orion. So this whole time, "I have brought the word, and the word," and he smashes here, "is battle." And here he destroys the tank here. "Now, Mother Box, the jammer is no more. Unbind these atoms and restore my true appearance. And you can see him turning back to Orion. "Warriors of Darkseid," he says, "the time has come at last to test your mettle." And I absolutely love this. Look at this. Oh, so beautiful. Orion beckons, how you will answer. Orion beckons, how will you answer him? So, oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Love Simonson. And so, all these guys, of course, are all enslaved by Darkseid, so they're all like, Darkseid this, Darkseid that. And so, and Orion destroys them, so off he goes, just shooting. And so, we just have a lot of action here. Kind of like I said, it's Simonson's swan song here. He's leaving the title. So look at this. And so here are the ashes. That should keep everybody busy for nonce. And then he, I don't think he's breaking the Mother Box. Something's, let's see here. Is he assembling the flowers again? Thank you, Mother Box. Rest in peace, you souls of the dead. Scot-free remembers, and now so will Orion. Scott was right. There is still something to be done. So he is the one laying the flowers for them. So, "Hear me, Darkseid. I know you're listening," says Orion. "Look upon me, Father, and see the true face of the enemy, the face of Orion, the face of your son." And Orion continues here. "Whichever way you turn from this time hence, it will always be before you. The game begins anew. The cold game of the butcher, without the equation, without statescraft, without honor, without compromise. Warrior to warrior, and confusion and death to the forces of apocalypse that it should be so. Look at that. Oh, so cool. Farewell. And says here, Orion's laughter fills the entire sky above the burning planet until even the illimitable heavens seem too small a place to hold it. Look at that. The fire pits. And so now we are back in Metropolis. And so Barda says, enough's enough, Scott. Orion's long gone. I know you're not really sick. No demonoid alive could have nailed you. What's going on? And he says, I just wanted to be on the safe side in case Orion came back. And Barda says, he hasn't. Barda, he did something really terrible, and some having trouble forgiving himself. But he's a great warrior and the greatest, and we need him. All who live and oppose apocalypse need him. So I've given him something to put that to do. Sorry, I've given him something to do that'll put him right back on the front lines. There isn't a ghost of a chance he'll get into apocalypse and out again without being noticed. I mean, he's Orion, for Pete's sake. What he'll find there will either kill him or cure him, and he's too tough to die. And she says, so you weren't wounded? And he's like, psh, those demonoids couldn't have wounded me if I'd been chained up inside a suitcase enclosed in a cement and superglued to a bull's eye next to Jimmy Hoffa's giant stadium. An elevated temperature staged blood looked real, huh? And suddenly, Metron is there. Bravo. An admirable performance. No one guessed. No one even suspected. And Mr. Miracle says, what do you mean? No need to be coy, Mr. Miracle. It's a wonderful gift, and you've wisely kept it hidden all this time, waiting for me. And he says, not a chance. On the contrary, Scott, you only have two choices. Use it on me and see yourself as unclean for the rest of your days. Your very name would become a lie. Or forbear, in which case I'll drop a word on the right ear, and one day Darkseid's assassins will come for you and Barda. Then you'll either have to use it or die. I'm offering you a third choice. A choice in the service of knowledge. And Barda says, what is this all about, Metron? I don't like your tone, she says. And so Metron says, quite simply, my dear, your husband carries within his comprehensive soul the anti-life equation. I thought it might have been you, but you're simply too large for the racer's costume. So Metron had figured it out. Scott Free, the poster child for freedom, is in fact the living embodiment of the destruction of free will everywhere. A delightful irony, no? I've only just deduced this on the basis of mounting evidence, but it's the one answer that makes sense. Your third choice, Scott, in Darkseid's laboratory on Apocalypse, are technological treasures that even I have never seen, including research into their old gods and the secret knowledge. I want it, and a word from you, it will be mine. I want it, and at a word from you, it will be mine. Okay, I did read it right. And Barda's like, I'm beginning to understand about those demonoids. I think you better leave, Metron, while you still can. And Metron says, don't be silly, Barda. I didn't come here unprepared. And this is a one-time only offer. Refuse me now and you'll never have another chance. And Orion has returned. And he's like, I've returned just in time, he thinks. It's tempting to kill Metron here and now, but I have a better idea. I must get to Centennial Park quickly. And so, apparently he goes unnoticed. Everything the anti-life equation touches seems to be twisted and unrecognizable, as I know better than anyone except Scott. He is the true guardian of such dangerous knowledge, but Metron's choice will destroy him. Little did I think, when I kept the Darkseid's temporal bender, that I should need it again so soon. Next time, I won't bury it as deep. So he grabs it and off he goes. So I found it. The costume of the black racer that Scott abandoned once he had lured me into the boom tube. Again, I have a playlist. I saw Metron inspecting it earlier in his laboratory. He must have retrieved it from here and taken it to examine. Undoubtedly, it gave him some clues to Scott's identity. But a short blast of the Astroforce, you can see it here, and there won't even be atoms left for him to examine. Motherbox will hide my time track here, and Scott's secret will be safe again. So it says here, Earth, a fragment meadow. And so here we have Metron, and he goes looking for it. He goes, nothing. Instruments detect a slight rise in O3 levels. I must have misread my tracers. They're all registering 0. It's a dead end. So basically what Orion did is changed the past slightly. So and so we go back to explaining this, and then it causes a temporal reshuffling. And he says, enough's enough, Scott. Orion's long gone. I'm okay, Barda. I felt a little lightheaded for a moment, but there's something I have to do. I have to go. To Apocalypse with flowers, she says. Barda, you go every year, my sweet dunce. Did you think I hadn't noticed? Well, I was kind of hoping. A good meal and a pleasant evening may have helped, Orion. It doesn't solve your problem. My shoulders are broader than yours, my dear. I can carry you and whatever load you have borne so long in silence. Will you not share your troubles? And Mr. Miracle says, I did hope to help Orion. He has paid a terrible price for his failure, and we could not speak of it plainly in front of you. But I think now I was wrong. When I return, my darling, we shall have a long talk. And in some ways, you hardly know the guy you're married to. And they kiss here, and she says, in some ways, I know all I need to know, and I'll be waiting. And so here's Orion on the side here. He says, the time stream's altered, and only I remember it the way it was. But you have helped me more than you will ever know, scot-free. And so we get to the last page here. You were right. We are the children of the pact, a pact that bound us as surely as we were brothers in the long ago. Never again will I forget that, and I will watch out for you as you have watched out for me. And so here we have Darkseid and Highfather over here, and of course Orion and Mr. Miracle. You sought to help me in spite of your awesome burden. You carry a burden I was unable to bear myself. Thank you. I have renewed my old responsibilities. And though the destruction of so much of Apocalypse this night will no longer be history, perhaps in his nightmares, Darkseid will dimly recall what never happened and feel a touch of fear. And so Orion says, it's time to return to New Genesis. I know, though who knows what they'll think of me when I come home after all that has happened. And he laughs. Yes, I'm sure you'll put in a good word for me. Let us be off. He's talking to the mother box here. For it is late, and the sunrise and friend light rays await us in the gleaming city of the gods. And so Walter Simonson says, here ends the chronicles of Red Orion, and his homecoming was joyful or fell. None can say. Certain it is that he was a great champion and stood between the light and dark against his own father, and that he found joy in battle, as few before him ever had. No more can be said at this time. The end. And Simonson signs it and says, for Susan and Roy. I think he means Roy Thomas. Don't know who that Susan is. So this officially ends both the issue, Orion 25, and the Orion series. Again, I have a playlist, but I have a couple of things I want to show you. So what I want to show you is a couple of the extras. So I have the individual issues 1 through 25, but I also have the trade paperback, because the trade paperback, which is what I've been showing you, comes with extras. So here's a sketch gallery from Simonson, and look at that, just so crude. It's just beautiful. Look at that. So that is beautiful. Oh, look at that. So yeah, I just wanted to show you a couple of these sketches here. There was one in each book here, so we'll go through them here. Look at that. Oh, I love Walter Simonson. I just can't say enough good things about Simonson. His art is so inspirational to me. How I fell in love with Walter Simonson was actually through his X Factor run, because I was such an X-Men guy, and just seeing him draw X Factor, I craved to find his work because I really liked it. I loved his work here, so I sought out his Thor run. And since then, I have actually just about everything he's ever done. So, that's how I fell in love with Walter Simonson, because I just think his work is so good. And so here comes the second book. Now there is a very short story here. So he did this cover here, and he does like a 5-page story here of Darkseid, and you can see his like lieutenants coming through here, and he tells them, on Earth, more than 2,000 years ago, a bold and ruthless mortal died after conquering his world. On his deathbed, he delivered his last will and testament. I prefer to deliver mine standing. So, look at this. Darkseid. Oh, he's so cool. Though the future is hidden even from me, I have seen the signs. The time of the prophecy's fulfillment is imminent. The voice of pure and total destruction will be heard across the land, and the stars themselves will shake their ancient courses. When that time comes, the future of apocalypse will be decided. And he throws this. Thus do I present you, my faithful, the last will and testament of Darkseid. You may read it at your leisure. And they're like, I don't believe it. It can't be serious. Give me that paper. Stand back, Desaad. Let Caliban crush your skull. Apocalypse. To whom has he left the apocalypse? And it says here, to the strongest. So whichever one of them is the strongest. Look at that. So that is so Darkseid. So all right, here we go. John Byrne and Walter Simonson. That just looks beautiful. I think those two should work together all the friggin' time. So look at that. I think there's an issue on an annual on X Factor that John Byrne pencils and Walter Simonson does ink. So I have that issue, but I don't have it with all my X Factor stuff. So, and so here's a pinup for Cosmic Odyssey. Look at that. Oh, I know why so many people have that comparison with him and Jack Kirby. I'm not a huge Kirby guy, but I just adore Simonson here, and I know a lot of people will go, well, how can you like one and not the other? And I don't know. I think Kirby's art just speaks to me better. I find Kirby to be very stiff, and Simonson a little bit more graceful. Perhaps that is, I don't know. Either way, I just fell in love with Simonson's, like I said, Simonson's art during X Factor, and I have followed him ever since, and I own everything he has ever done. So, huge fan. And so, back to some more sketches, and we're almost done here. Oh, Walter Simonson. Just love his stuff. So, alright, we'll just end it here. So, hope you enjoyed this series. Again, it's done. No more Orion. Hopefully in the future, it'll pick up more play with people that just love Walter Simonson. So, like and subscribe. I do thank everybody for listening. Goodbye.